in this segment, let us look at Luke chapter 8. Luke chapter 8. And we're going to go all the way down toward verse 43, and we're going to pick up with this lady here when she touches Jesus' garments. Luke chapter 8, verse 43 from the King James. And a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any, came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her issue of blood stopped. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And the narrative goes on from there. But we just want to look at these verses right here because this is what we're going to look at. So as we've done in our previous segments, we're not going to look at the healing. We want to see the cultural moment behind it. What does this woman touch? Let's go back to Luke chapter 8, verse 44. Came behind him, so she came up behind Jesus and touched the border of his garment. Now, the King James uses the word border. The NIV uses the word edge. The English Standard Version and the New Revised Standard Version use the word fringe. Now, each of those English words are translating the Greek word Kraspedon, which is G2899. Now, when I'm sitting here, and I've studied from this passage a lot, and I've presented from this passage a tremendous amount. Now, what's interesting about this passage is I always had a hard time understanding what border or fringe or edge was until I found the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. And as I was studying it some years ago, I just put in this word and I did my search in an electronic version of the Greek Old Testament, and I found this. And I'm like, oh, so this helps me out a little bit. So I had found this Greek word, Kraspedon, back here in the Greek Old Testament. Now, if you go back into all of our contextual discussions that we did way back in our early studies of this year, you'll see where we were talking about the Septuagint. So you have the Hebrew Old Testament, you have the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of it, and then way down here you get the English. So when Jesus is working and doing his ministry, there are two Bibles. There's the Hebrew and then there's the Greek, because the Greek comes out of Alexandria. But Jesus would probably be working primarily with the Hebrew because he's in the Jerusalem area. But what we want to do is we want to go look into the Old Testament where this Greek word is found. The Greek word is found in Numbers 15, verse 38 and 39. Kraspedon, which was G2899, is found in Numbers 15, 38 and 39. So let's look at those verses in the King James, and we're going to read through verse 41. So here's what the Old Testament has to say about this. Speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make them fringes. So that's what the Greek word would be in the Septuagint, would be Kraspedon, or its variant depending on how it's spelled for its purpose in the Greek. But as you can see here in the King James, it calls it fringes. Over in Luke, it calls it borders, and then the other translations used edge or fringe. But speak unto them and bid them that they make fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and they put upon the fringe, that same Greek word, because we're using the Septuagint now, the fringe of the borders, a riband of blue, and it shall be unto you for a fringe, that when you look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go a-whoring, that you may remember and do all my commandments and be holy unto your God. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God, for I am the Lord your God. So, to make the connection again, you're over here in Luke and you find this Greek word, Kraspedon. You're like, where is that? Well, you go back to the Greek translation of the Hebrew. And the Kraspedon is translating the Hebrew word Tzitzit, and we'll get to that and describe it just a little bit before we end this segment. But what we have is a command that tells the children of Israel what this Kraspedon is to do and why you have it. And we find that is the lady who touches this very item of Jesus. So what is a Kraspedon? Well, it is a twisted cord, and how they may have twisted them back in the day of Jesus may be different than how it's done today. As with many things, there are traditions that go into the design of the tzitzit, how many twists you put into the braid, and all kinds of things. So there are also different interpretations of what makes for a proper tzitzit. So what you see behind me is my backdrop, and it's always been my backdrop, but it is my talit. That is my prayer shawl. It's up behind me, and on each corner is a tassel. This is a Kraspedon. This is a tzitzit. This is a fringe. Now, Orthodoxy says there's not to be any blue because the ink that was used to make the blue cannot be found anymore. So this makes an Orthodox tzitzit. However, you can get into different communities that study out the Torah and they do it a little bit different. And this is another style of tzitzit. And this one has a blue thread, as you can see, which is commanded in Numbers. And it has the blue thread there. And so you're reading Torah and you're seeing a different command and you're making this type of tzitzit. Now, I've also made some for myself, and my wife helped me tie this one. And it's a little bit smaller. It's using a different style of thread. But no matter which one you tie it with, whether it's cotton or something else, you're supposed to make it out of all the same material. And so this one has red, purple, and blue, and it has the colors reminiscent of the tabernacle. So that's what this one has. This was one of my own personal ones. So what color was Jesus? Did he have a blue thread? People are going to argue about these things, but I'm going to say that he's Torah observant, so he's going to have a blue thread in there. Jesus knows his Torah. Jesus, Rabbi Yeshua, wore his tzitzit. Now, he may have tied them completely different than the way these are tied, but he had them. This is what the lady touched, because Jesus is a man who is mindful of the Torah, and these are the things which are commanded in the Torah. And as you can go back to those verses, you can see why they're to be done. So it is something that is commanded, and Jesus is walking around. He has these on his garments. The lady touches these, and she's healed. So this is a pretty powerful thing. It is testifying not only to Jesus embodying the teachings of the Torah, but he is following what he has taught by the Torah, and the people who come to him for healing are touching what's commanded by Torah. So this lady has a very significant impact on what she's touching, and I know a lot of time is spent upon her healing, but we're spending time upon what she did. So, tzitzit, commanded in the Torah, Jesus wore them, and she touched this, and from that she found a powerful healing that was made by her faith.